All right, we're live. All right, everyone, thanks for joining the very last presentation, definitely not the least. We got Patrick Coble, aka the VDI Hacker. He's going to be going over Privileged Account Management 101. So let's jump straight into some trivia. Trivia.
For the win.
All right. What team has the longest winning streak in NBA history? Yeah. Get some Jeopardy music for next time.
Do 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 do.
Martin B, LA Lakers. All right.
Yeah, I just think back to like Scottie Pippen and the Bulls. That's what I think.
Right. Yeah. So Martin, go ahead and email Jennifer Gibbons at mycugc.org. And really anybody I call out as the winner, do that. All right. And it looks like everyone's happy you survived the dog attack, Patrick.
Yeah, I know. I pulled through.
How many MLB teams are there currently?
Ooh.
I always forget there's a delay.
Oh, yeah.
Brian M. with the answer of 30. So, Brian, please email Jennifer. And final question. Before basketball was invented, what type of balls were used to play basketball? Oh, dang. Looks like Blake A, soccer. You are correct. Soccer ball.
Or I guess the football for our international audience, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep. All right. Well, cool. Let's end for trivia. Just remember, everyone who won, please email jennifer.gibbons@mycugc.org to collect your prize. And now I turn it on to the great and mighty Patrick.
Yay. All right. I hope everyone is doing good. The dog attack, I kind of pulled through. It was an interesting time. If anybody has like a barky dog, you might have a chill dog that no matter what happens, someone knocks on the door, they just like really don't care. I've got one chill and one barky, and the barky notified me that there was a visitor. So yeah, that was fun. All right, let's get cooking here. So we're going to talk about Privileged Account Management 101 and who has the privileges in your deployment. This is what we're going to hopefully find out. That's me. I'm a dude that clicks things and types things. I started out back in the day. You guys have seen me before, so we'll kind of skip through this because we got a lot of clickies to do. Basically, my story is 386DX. I used to put floppy disk in a big call center, did the CNA and MCP classes in high school, did some hacker stuff, joined the Marine Corps, and now I do this and this, right? I point and then click at things, right? So I'm in my natural habitat right now. I do a lot of presentations on hackers, on how to break into virtual desktop deployments, and I do a lot of presentations with blue teams and people, Citrix user groups, VMware user groups, and other entities on how to secure the virtual desktop deployment. And I'm a CTP and V expert and all that kind of nerdy stuff. I think this was still in there because the last time I got to present this was in Houston, which was at one of the last in-person XLs. And this is me and Steve Greenberg, and I thought it was appropriate, and we decided to leave it in there because we got to go to Mission Control and sit in this infamous room right here where Apollo missions happened. And when the first people on the moon put their feet down, it was totally epic. And sitting in there and seeing it restored back to its natural state, and which even included burnt up cigarettes, right? Because they were smoking like crazy back then. It was an incredible experience. And to even go back on Ron's presentation this morning, is the computers we work on and the things we're doing right now is because of the room you're looking at, right? Texas Instruments, IBM, everybody. The IT in general was because of the space race. Computers were coming along and coming of age, but it really was pushed it. And that's because it needed to be smaller, lighter, faster, right? And so it's just an amazing to kind of connect the history of our computing to what we do now, right? And so let's get into this. So there's lots and lots of wild domain privileges out there. I do lots of audits, and it's kind of crazy sometimes what I find. And so that's why I wanted to make this presentation, was to let people know what privileged access is, because most people just think it's domain admins and that's all you ever have to worry about. There's a lot more built-in groups that we need to worry about. There's a lot of privileged accounts, and then groups that you might have that are also have some extra special powers and stuff too. Yeah, and of course you had human computers back then, and I think that was a good analysis by Ron, because if we could just change the trajectory of an asteroid by just a couple degrees by pushing it away, if we catch it soon enough, that's millions of miles away from Earth, right? So those trajectories and calculating all that was absolutely astonishing. That we were able to do that, and that was a lot of slide rulers and straight up. That's when algebra and calculus were something that was 100% practical for those people. All right, so PAM goals. We need to know who has access to what, when was it used last, where was it accessed from, and what did they do when they did whatever they did. Most people don't know a lot of those questions and can't really answer those at all. And so how bad is it for you? I know we can't, if you don't want to answer the hacker in group chat, I understand. But how many of you are domain admins to do your EUC job? Now, some of you have I know a lot of us wear a lot of different hats, and you have different responsibilities for Active Directory, for maybe the virtualization deployment and everything in between. But are you a member of domain admin? And do you know everyone and everything that's in your domain admin group right now? I've been at places that had 4 or 5, and I've been to places that had 400 and 500 things in there. And that's people and regular, right? Because a lot of people have a lot of things that are from years ago that were for some random application that they installed that needed domain admin. It didn't really need domain admin, but it was just easier to make it work. And if you ever had Exchange on site, then that means a lot of your built-in privilege groups are probably a little messier than others if you've never went back and cleaned it up. Your enterprise and schema admin groups probably have people in them, when by default and recommended, they should have nobody in them. And then hopefully you have a Citrix admin group, and that's so that you can control who's accessing Citrix Studio, Provisioning Console, WIM, Citrix ADC. The whole kit and caboodle can be controlled by those groups or multiple groups to give that delegated access. And it just needs to be local admin on that. So the moral of this story with these couple questions is that a Citrix admin does not need to be a domain admin in any situation. Now, there can be instances where you need to do that, but I would recommend separate accounts. And hopefully your Citrix ADC, it has its own admin group, and it's bound to LDAP. No one should be ever logging into that Citrix ADC as NS root. That is just a bad pandas. You don't want to do that. And you should have alerts when this is set up. So this is where, with Jen talking about WAF and things like this, is where syslog becomes critical. You need to have syslog monitoring turned on for all that stuff. And then, do you have a separate admin account? Hopefully you're not using your Coble to log in to your email and the same Coble to log in to the Citrix servers. Yeah, and I'm with you, Paul. I wish Citrix Cloud had more delegated access. It's coming, though. If you've noticed over the past couple months, there have been more checkboxes that have been added. So it's coming. And put those ADCs in a DMZ. Those NSIPs, so you can't do it. All right. And you should never check your internets or the emails with that. You should never seal your image with a domain admin account. If you seal your image with a domain admin account, anyone who breaks into that computer with execution rights will be whatever permission the highest privileged user is there because of the LSAS service and the thing called Mimikatz. So if you're using a domain admin account to seal your image, you don't want to do that. You want to delete that local profile from there, which will clear that cache, and you want to log in as just a local admin on that box. And make sure you have different passwords for your admin account, and hopefully you have different password requirements, at least 16 characters, if not 20. We'll get into why that's important later. And how much power does your service desk have? And I go to a lot of places where some service desks are, everyone probably has some tiers, but sometimes they're just plopped into domain admins because it just makes it work. And what that means is that you just created an audit nightmare because then they can add people to privileged groups, and depending on your logging, you may never know, right? So you need to make sure you've got that. Some people use the account operators group, which is good. It's not ideal because it also gives them inherent default rights to the domain that you might not expect. And we'll talk about that in a second. Domain admin, custom delegation is the way to go. And we'll kind of get into that. This is the Six Sigma. These are the big accounts we need to worry about. Print operators is another one in here, and that's because most people, when I do audits on the AD security side, is print services are deployed on a domain controller. So if you're a print operator, you are also able to log into the domain controller, which is not good, right? So let's look at those things that are in the built-in group. So this is Active Directory, next. These are all the groups that it blahs out. It's a whole bunch, right? And it can get a little concerning if you're trying to figure out who needs to be in there. The good thing is if you built a brand new Active Directory, almost all of them are completely empty with no membership. So some of these, like access control, account operators, here's our first one we want to stop at. This grants access to users to add workstations to domain, which a user by default, which they shouldn't be able to do with user rights assignments, can add 10 computers to the domain. When we were in the work group and it was like a team sport, when we had ThickNet and the internet could actually fall out because you didn't put the BNC connector on there, that it made sense then. But in this new digital age and security and everything else, you don't want to be on that. So you'll be good there. So there's more to do there because they can actually add people to some of those privileged groups, and then those privileged groups will have access to other things. So an account operator by default is very privileged in what it can do. Especially if you think about your finance department and HR department, adding someone to a simple AD group so they can get to a file share may be very damaging to your business, and that's where you need to do that. You will get these slides. There's a whole bunch of them, so I'm going to have to go quick through some of this. So you don't have to memorize all the things. There's not a test afterwards. But wherever you put your computers and users, that's how good account operators is going to work, right? Backup operators is another one that gets used a lot, especially, of course, by backup software. But it has a whole lot of access to every system in your deployment. And so you need to be looking at these groups to figure out what's going on. Certificate services, it's got rights that most people don't. Cryptographic, distributed comm, event log readers, your guest, Hyper-V administrators, IIS users, incoming forest trust builders, very weird stuff here, network configuration operators, performance log. There's a lot of these groups. If you have this pre-Windows 2000 compatible access group in, you need to look at that because that can be a leftover from a older deployment, and you need to see who's in there because it could be related to a lot of stuff. Print operators, just like I said, I've broken into people's deployments by being a member of print operators, and that was because the domain controller had print services installed on it, and inherently you can do that. So print operators is something you need to pay attention to. RAS and AS, RDS management, this can come into that, what we're doing. RDS remote access servers, this is a lot of things. So if you can see a theme of these, most everybody has the same inherited user rights, and that's because it's applied at the default domain policy and the default delegation. So you're going to get almost all these groups have the same inherited rights because they're off the root of your domain. Remote management users, read-only domain controllers, right? If you've got any of that, a replicator right, this is where the sysvol and non-sysvol FRS replication happens with DFS. So you want to look at who's inside this group and what machines. Server operators gets used a lot, kind of dangerous. As you can see, it can log into any member server, which I've seen people actually try to nest the account operators and the server operators group into there so that their service desk and admins could log into every server. If you see, it doesn't seem like it's very benign, but if you're allowed to log on locally on pretty much any Windows system with a couple steps, you're going to be able to do some bad things. So we need to make sure we're paying attention to that. Storage replica, terminal server, license server, we always have to deal with that. And then users, right? And you can see inherited rights, accesses computer from the network and add workstations to the domain. This is where we want to change that user rights assignment, that default one, because we don't want regular users or service accounts to be able to add things to the domain. Because are you looking at your computer OU all the time or your 4,300 other OUs to see if someone makes a new object? If you're not, then you don't want this to happen. You don't want someone to be able to add some virtual machine, some other entity to your domain and have those inherent rights kind of come back to bite you in the butt. So a lot more stuff in there. And then within the users OU, there's even more groups, right? And don't worry, you're going to get this presentation so you can click on it at a much slower speed and take your time. But these are those other default groups in the users OU. Administrator, the user, right? Logging should be cranked up to 11. You should know anytime and every time that account is being used anywhere in your deployment. And the password should be changed at least yearly. I've been to places where it hasn't been changed since inception. And what does that mean? I've seen passwords as old as 23 years. That's the oldest password I've seen in a security audit in the past couple years. And so a 23-year-old password, what have we learned in 23 years of making passwords? Hopefully a lot with passphrases and other things. So the strength of that password was laughable. And depending on how many people knew that password, it's also laughable too, because anyone and everyone can do it. So that administrator user has all the rights, right? It is the most privileged user by default in your domain. And it's for a reason, right? So there's no need to really turn down this account, but we need to do that. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you wanted to make your password 23 years ago password so that you could remember it because it'll prompt you and tell you. But we has the power with that administrator account. Very, very, very dangerous. The administrator user is going to be in these default groups, right? So it's going to be in domain admin, domain users, enterprise admins, group policy creators, and schema admins. So it's in those groups, and it's fine to be in those groups. We don't need to pull it out. But for almost all those groups, it should be the only member in all those groups. So this could be a baby ugly kind of situation for some of you, because you might be clicking your domain admins group right now and seeing 173 people in it, and knowing that half of those are service accounts, and then knowing that half of that half is passwords that haven't been changed in years, right? So it's good. So administrators group. This group should be empty in it too. It should just have that in there. Now, a lot of people used to use this group because, especially when Trust came out, because it controls your local domain, right, versus anything else. And so it has also a ton of mucho power, right? It's got the power to do a lot of stuff, and that's because it's the same group that gives the rights to the administrator user, right? So if you're in that, you've got all kinds of stuff. RDoc, password replication, it's not anything crazy. Cert publishers, clonable, denied, DHCP, DHCP admins, DNS admins. These are all important groups, but almost all these should be completely blank. But then domain admins. This is the one that we see the most violators in all the time. DA membership should be a break the glass kind of situation. Depending on what your privileged account management strategy is, this is an account that you're just going to use for that specific instance when you need to do something, right? And that's your administrator account in many cases. That administrator account should be that password that you lock away and no one logs on, and when someone logs on, it does. But it's the ultimate key to get back into Active Directory if something fails or you need to make that change, right? So look at this and, think about it for your environment and go through it, right? So it doesn't have any direct user rights, but it gets all the inherited rights because of the administrator group and the way the default delegation works in Active Directory. So it is very, very powerful. It has the same power globally in your domain as administrators does too, right? So it's got 29 things that happen to it. So it's basically like making 175 administrator accounts. So we don't want to do that. Domain computers is that, no big deal. Controllers, guest, right? But, this is where some of this stuff comes up is, why does domain guest get it to add a computer to the domain by default? We don't want that in our life, all right? These are default delegations that we can fix. Domain users, same thing, right? Why do they get to add it to the domain? Enterprise admins is definitely another one, especially when I talked about earlier, Exchange. If you had Exchange in the past, you probably are a member of enterprise admins because you needed it to extend schema work along with attribute work within Active Directory. So this group should be empty, right? Should just have administrators in it, and that's it. It has a lot of power too. If you look at it, it's got the 29 same inherited rights that domain admins has, which is the same 29 rights that has. But everyone thinks that enterprise admins, in some cases that I've talked to and done audits and reports, is they think it's a weak account, but really it has unlimited power because it's just as strong as everything else. Enterprise key admins doing all this good stuff. Going through here, is it 2 minutes already? I guess I am, right? Are we 2 minutes? All right.
No.
Oh, I guess it's like the old meeting team chat is still showing. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I was getting worried there for a second. Bleep, bleep, bleep. Okay. All right. Guest, Hyper-V administrators, KRB TGT. This is definitely one that gets away with a lot of people. This is a service account that controls the Kerberos tickets. And this is exactly how I break into a lot of environments, by using this specific account based on how it's hashed and based on if I can get a golden ticket or a silver ticket. And those tickets have to do with the LSAS service and me breaking into a local computer and then gaining access from there. So it's definitely something you want to pay attention to. Key admins, protected users. Hardly anyone uses this. This protected users is what all service accounts should be in, because it turns on inherent logging within Active Directory and helps make your audits easier because you know who your protected users are. Do we put domain admins in protected users? No, it already is built in that way. But if you're going to make Citrix admins, VMware admins, ADC admins, they should be in this group. And you can look at this link to learn more about it. It's got lots and lots of stuff for there. And read-only domain controllers, not too many people are using them, but whoever's in this group, there's the AD security. If you don't know who Sean Metcalf is, if you want to take privileged account management to the next level, I highly recommend spending some time and looking at that page and that article, along with just Googling Sean Metcalf to find out more about it. He runs adsecurity.org, and lots of amazing content there that you're going to be able to learn and deploy. Schema admins is in there, and so this is the one that a lot of people, if you had on-site Exchange or you had SCCM or some of these other products that tied into the schema and into Active Directory, it was there. So I would like you to make sure you go look at this guy because it's got some power too, and it can also always add things to the domain. I don't know if anyone's getting a trend of this. So squirrel. There's a literal squirrel. So I think there's got to be some car people in here, so I'm going to have to wait for a second with the delays and stuff. If anyone can spot this, I know some of you have probably seen some of my sessions of where in the world is the VDI hacker when you look at this road. We'll see if anyone gets it before I click to the next slide here. This was a tip of a E2E VC last year, which was just like, as a car person, was like the best thing since sliced bread. But on this road, you have 3 signs. One sign that says 60 kilometers an hour. One sign that says 60 kilometers an hour is done. And one sign that says release the Kraken, unlimited, unrestricted speed. So this is the Autobahn. And it is, if you ever get a chance to go do it, do it. This is a BMW M2 at 267 kilometers an hour, aka 155 miles an hour. I was sad that it was limited. I thought everything was awesome over there. And the one thing that I loved about Germany, so if you had Porsche, Mercedes, and BMW, all have GPSs built into some of their new cars that actually tell you when to put your pedal to the metal. And that was pretty awesome to get to see that and experience that. But then I was let down by Waze because it could only track 137 miles an hour. I thought it was better than that for traffic. This was me driving from Berlin to the Autobahn. I did get pulled over on the way back and detained for a little bit because they thought the car was stolen. So that was kind of interesting. And this was at like 2:30 in the morning. So I even texted my wife before that I loved her because I thought this could be the last time. Now, I don't know if Audi's greater than BMW. I mean, if we think about that for a little, like we're talking about like prototype cars, LMP, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But when we talk about like R8 versus M4 in the GT3 world, I don't know. I mean, the Quattro is an amazing thing. I will concede to that. There's no doubt. One of the things I liked about Germany and driving around there was seeing history. Seeing something in America that we think is, oh, that's pretty old. That's like a building from the 1800s. But then from there, you see a bridge like this that's over 1,000 years old, and a castle and everyone in there. So it was ready to go. Electric vehicles are cool. It's just I just don't know. I get the range. Audi owns a lot. Yes, Lamborghini and Porsche. I agree. Probably some people should spot this corner right here of what this is. A couple people that got Autobahn should probably know where in the world I was driving to, because I already spoiled it too. But yeah, that's the carousel and the Nürburgring. And this is a McLaren 600 LT, which will actually rip the skin off your face if you turn left and right. Is an amazing car. It got to 270 kilometers on the front straightaway like it was going out of style, 150 miles an hour. And it was great. There's me in a little 3 Series with the Nürburgring Castle in the background. Pretty awesome. There's a guy. If you do this, make sure you pay for instruction. Don't just go out there with your rental car. Pay for the instruction. I used Apex Company. They were the best because it was also a hotel deal too. They helped you so much. You're not going to learn this track in there. And then, of course, I got to eventually drive an M2. I wish I would have rented it the whole time. But I'm glad I used a car with training wheels before, because if anyone knows about racing, it's all about time. So it's the time for you to react, to get in the left lane, to downshift 2 times, to go over here. The faster you go, the less time you have, right? So you have to react a lot faster. And with as long a track and as many curves as the Nürburgring is, you can't play around that much. All right. So far, you're probably like, what is this guy doing? He just went over a bunch of stuff. Now, we're going to try to fix your problem with privileges now, right? So we've talked a lot about what those groups were, some of the details of them. But now we actually want to fix the problem because there's lots of danger administrator out there, right? And you need to be careful with these things. This is the remediation portion of this process, right? So first step, do you have separate privileged accounts? Yes, awesome. No, sad panda, right? You need to have separate privileged accounts. You do not need to check email with the same account that you seal your image and you do other things, right? So you need to do that. And so first, after we've done that, we need to focus on the Fantastic Four, or maybe the unfantastic four of administrators, domain admins, and enterprise admins. Schema admins can kind of come in there if we want, like, a Superman appearance or a Spider-Man appearance. So these Fantastic Four have this much privilege, which is the most privilege you can have. So that's why we're starting with these 4 accounts and these 4 groups. So we need to make sure that we know who is in these 4 core groups. This is your biggest problem. It doesn't mean everything else isn't going to catch on fire and erupt in flames, but it's definitely something you want to do that. Oh, it looks like this thing is, it changed the things. All right. So who are your privileged users? So this is where your org chart's going to come in. We talk about fixing those 4 core accounts. We need to know who is in IT, what level in IT they're at, and who do they need access to. Now, if anyone has ever seen some of my other sessions, I talk about dhash.com or haveibeenpwned.com, where you can look at breach and leak data for your domain, company.com, and find out how many hundreds or thousands of people have used your email address, your company email address, to sign up for Canva, Adobe, LinkedIn, and everything under the sun, right, that has been breached and leaked. So you need to know who these are. These people that you find in this public data need to be in a special Active Directory group, and you need to be able to apply policies to them eventually, right? Especially when we talk about spam training and stuff like that, you need to do that. It's a good training opportunity, and if any privileged user, any of your domain admins, account operators, help desk people are on this list, extra red flag for them, right? Because this is where the intersection of personal and private security, cybersecurity habits collide. And it's going to cause a problem for you. And then we need to pull all those out of that sizzling 6, right? Account operators, administrators, backup, domain admins, enterprise admins, schema admins, and we go from there, right? And printer operators and other things we still would want to look at, but we're trying to go from the top down, the most risk to the lowest risk. So we want to look at all these. Remember, some of these groups should be blank. So we need to plan for those groups to be blank. If there's 72 people in domain admins, well, we're done. Should be 1 person. Administrator, maybe 2, not administrator, right? Some other service account that you'll use in case something really goes bad. And we want to put all the service accounts, we want to put them all in that protected user group. We want to also put them in a separate OU. We want to change custom delegation. An account operator or your service desk people maybe should not be able to do the edits of those passwords. I've even been at places where service account has folders and OUs underneath it so that the Citrix team can control these service accounts, VMware team can control these, SMB, DBAs, all the way down, right? So that way we can make sure we can reset the passwords we need to do our job, but everyone else in the organization, just because you're in IT, doesn't mean that. I've been at a lot of places where CIOs, directors, and stuff like that also are part of domain admins. And when we get down and we start talking about workflow and job profiles and what they do, they don't ever log into anything other than email and do meetings. So them having domain admin as like a security blanket because of their technical old days shouldn't be there, right? What we should do is put them in a group that gives them access to those things at the correct level and not just domain admin. All right, so then we want to pull all your AD users' age, and you want to find out everybody that has really long age, and of course is marked to never expire. Go after never expire first, because those should be the oldest passwords in your deployment. And then look for privileged accounts in that list, because most service accounts you have to set to never expire because that's just the nature of the beast. But it doesn't mean that we can't change those passwords once a year, even if it really is annoying. That means set a calendar invite for each one of your types of accounts so that you have a chance to do that. And then go after everybody else that's past that's enabled, right? And that's definitely a key, is things that were marked never expire or have long password ages that are disabled aren't a huge risk yet, but they are still a risk. We still need to clean up our Active Directory. Look at those the login dates for those inactive accounts. Find those dormant accounts, because those are the most risk. And if you've customized AD beyond the defaults, it's going to take you a little bit longer to go through this, because that means you can't just trust if you put users in the users OU that everyone in this group can or can't access it. That's where having a good root domain policy with like workstations, servers, users, groups at the top, or company name and then under, can really, really provide a lot of security, because you can give access to those OUs one step at a time. And then a lot of third parties. Think about how many vendors have access to log into your place. Maybe it's your SOC, which is probably okay and it has to happen. But think about other people, partners, vendors that have access to log in to your VPN and to everything else. And are they in those privileged accounts? Because if they are, something happens to them, something happens to you. There's been lots of attacks that have happened because of that. How many people are even in your system? Do you even know when a third-party person logs in? This is when syslog and account AD groups comes critical. You should know when third-party people are in and out of your system. It shouldn't just be like, surprise, we fixed something, have a great day. And then do you have any domain trust, one way or two way? Because whoever's in the domain admin group and enterprise admin group of either domain, you need to know who those people are, because you have to trust them both directions. And then who has any elevated? So this is where naming standard is very, very important. And you need to know that they are a service, they're a third party, anything like that. Service accounts should hopefully be like this, SVC something, or you go down the obfuscation route. I just did an audit for a company just a couple weeks ago, and they use obfuscated names for all their admins and most of their service accounts, and it was awesome. They weren't as cool as Professor Xavier, James T. Kirk, and all that, but that's where it comes in. And then this is where I'm talking about using that protected users group. You need to test this before that. Make sure that you've dialed in those permissions to where they need to be. Admin groups. You need desktop admins, you need server admins. Look at these questions here and think about it for you. Are you giving the right amount of rights to each one of these separate groups? OU structure will just make it easier for you if you're able to do that. Now, some of you have thousands of OUs or maybe just a couple hundred. This might not be very easy and it'll be very painful. It's going to take a lot more process. But if you can get to something where it's just every account, every desktop, every server outside of the default ones, you can make your life a lot easier and still keep it just as secure, if not more, right? Passwords. Everybody has them. No one likes them. If you guys know Jason Samuel, I hope, but he's been like the king of multi-factor and passwordless in the CTP world and around in the Microsoft community too. So making sure you've got good password complexity. And this is where you need 7 to 16 for users is kind of what I see. And making sure you have password history so you can go there. Passwordless is coming, but most people aren't ready for that yet. But let's talk about passphrases versus passwords. Password is like Spring 2020, which is like a very common password that I break into people's deployments with. And that's because I found their LinkedIn database breach and it was Spring 2012. So I tried Spring 2020, bam, logged in. It only takes a couple seconds to crack a password like that. Whereas if you just add more words and then add spaces and then put a couple special characters and then do a bunch of this stuff, it's going to take days, weeks, months. And just like most alarm systems are really, built for notification and time. They're about time too, giving you time to respond to the attacker, right? And so if you have really strong password complexity standards and everything else, you can make sure that if someone gets access to your Active Directory, they can't break things that quickly, right? It's going to take some time, which hopefully will give you enough time to track them down and find them. And just like I said before, even your users should probably have 14-character passwords or more. And I know that sounds terrifying, but if you think about just what we showed, you can have a very complex password that's still very strong, even without complexity turned on, where we have uppercase, lowercase, and some numbers, right? And you can see here, this is from SANS, is that at that 14-character mark, it starts actually taking a while to break into these accounts, whereas everything else is just a fraction of a day. So we want to be there, and that's why for privileged accounts, we need to be in the 20 plus. And even your privileged accounts that you use versus your service accounts. Weak passwords look like this. It will erupt in flames, and your user's bad password habits and your own password habits will be the cause of that forest fire there. So do you have what it takes? If you've got Windows, you've got a privilege problem. If you don't have Windows event log forwarding, it's going to be a lot more tough. If you don't have a SIM, you need to get down that road. If you don't have a password manager, there's lots of things out there. Bitwarden is a good one that I use for people that can't afford like another one or a real PAM. And do you have a couple room for some RDS VMs? Because if you do, we can make a privileged account management system with your Citrix licenses. So we can do it DIY or we can do a paid solution. Now, privileged access workstations or PAWs or PAMs, those are going to be machines that we allow access to the NSIP, allow access to log into domain controllers, allow access to log into database, file servers, application servers. Everything else will not be able to contact these things without it, right? And so that means we can log 10 or 20 machines, depending on the size of your deployment, instead of tens of thousands of machines. Should we still log all 10,000? Yes. But do we want the logging cranked up to 11 for these 10? Yes, right? So hopefully y'all can get through there too. Service desk, level 1, level 2, level 3, workstation admins. I'm just giving you examples of some of these groups that you're going to make. File, Citrix admin, AppX, AD, domain admin rights. So you can give something that's close to domain admin without giving them full domain admin, right? So you can make a custom group that's not domain admin. And so what does this mean? Is that every privileged user is usually just a member of just a couple things. Let me go back because it built out one extra click. And there we go. Sound effects help. So if you look here, this is where, depending on what groups you have access to, will give you access to those correct things. And when we RDS to this new privileged account workstation, this RDS server that's cranked up to 11 for logging, we have everything set up and session recording enabled. We can see what the person did. All right. And PAM solutions, there's lots of them out there. And a lot of these things are really cool because in some cases you're checking out an account and you never knew the password of this account. So that's very, very powerful. And so I highly, highly recommend it. You can look at those vendors there. They're there. You need to have something. You have to have a policy. Your leadership needs to buy into this. This is something that is a team sport. You're not going to just do this next over the weekend. So I highly recommend, talking with your team and kind of figuring out what's going to work best for you guys and what you have. It's easier to do, and this is going to be the roadblocks, but it's more secure. We have to trade convenience for security in so many instances in our life right now. And when it comes to admin rights of Active Directory domain, it's no different. Service accounts and new things, we need to know what's going on. We don't want ways around this to show up. And lost priorities. This is the next thing we're always going to battle is, COVID comes up. We don't have time to do this now. We don't have time to do that. And we have to change our priorities. So keeping this at the top and maybe just scheduling an hour or two meeting once a week for the next couple of weeks, you can chip away at this privileged account problem that you most likely have and make your deployment much, much, much more secure. And so we use naming groups and standards to make sense so that if you're in next gen, we're using this for this, this for that, and everything else. So everything is tied together with Active Directory so that when you have a user, not a privileged account, dadgummit. You think I'd get good at this. Bloop right there. So that's what a good security policy would be, where Joe has USB access, but Susan can log in remotely. Both of them can print. Both of them can access file shares. Both of them can log into NextGen. Both of them can get to the delivery group, have app locker, have multi-factor authentication just by being a member of that one thing. So definitely good stuff. Overall, audit your stuff. Look at MFA requirements. This is where we can, if you have Duo or Azure MFA, you can turn it on just those privileged account workstations instead of everything. I recommend turning it on every member server there is to make sure you have double and triple logging and it slows down an attacker drastically to be able to do that and create some kind of PAM solution. So go buy one or go build one. Either way. Checklist, we're running out of time here, so we're gonna give you, y'all can read and it's good stuff, but I've talked about all these things a couple times throughout this presentation. And you don't want to keep going down the road like you are right now. You don't want default AD groups. You want custom AD groups to control the security of your stuff. And so worst findings kind of right there, 150 members in domain admins with only 500 people in the whole company. Not good. Almost every password over 15 years old. So I hope you learned something. There's a couple more slides about privacy after this, but you guys will get that on the flip side. And if there's any questions, I'm kind of watching. I know it's like a fire hose of information. And there's a whole pile of people here. So if anyone wants to use your words in group chat, I think we're about wrapped up. Thank you guys for the opportunity, and I hope you learned something. And next up is Jason, and we are going to get ready to do some Fiesta fun times here. So I'm excited, and thank you all so much.
Cool. Thanks, man. Just a quick reminder, if you aren't already registered, go ahead and join your local group. And then next up, we have our roundtables. So be sure to hit those up and ask questions. And then also after that, we do have a happy hour, a Zoom happy hour that starts at 4:25. And I'll see you all there. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.